modern RV industry wants to sell you complexity. Touchscreen control panels that need a software update. Smart leveling systems with circuit boards buried somewhere you'll never find them. Lithium battery banks with computer chips managing every cell. And if that chip fails, that whole expensive battery bank might as well be a brick sitting under your floor. In over 40 years of RVing, I've watched this industry add more and more electronics to systems that used to be dead simple, and I've watched folks pay dearly for it when something they can't see and can't fix decides to quit on them 3 states from home, usually right when they need that system working the most. I understand the appeal of all this new technology, I really do. A touchscreen looks impressive on a showroom floor, and I won't pretend some of these modern conveniences don't make certain parts of camping easier. But there's a real cost that comes with all that convenience, and it's not just the dollar amount on the sticker. It's the risk you're taking on every single time you add another layer of electronics between you and a working system. Every chip, every sensor, every circuit board is one more thing that has to work perfectly for your rig to function the way it's supposed to, and every one of those components is something you likely can't diagnose or fix yourself if it goes wrong out on the road. But there are a handful of systems out there, the kind that don't rely on a single microchip, that have been quietly doing their job in RVs for decades without asking for much of anything in return. No updates, no recalibration, no waiting on a part from 3 states away. Install them right, take basic care of them, and they will flat out outlast the rig they're bolted to. Today I'm counting down the 3 RV systems I trust the most. The ones that earn the phrase install once, camp forever. And I'm going to tell you exactly why they hold up, what folks get wrong about them, and how to keep them running for the long haul. Coming in at number 3 is your manual stabilizer and leveling system. The screw jacks or scissor jacks you crank down by hand at every campsite. Now I know some of you are already rolling your eyes because these days everybody wants the push-button electric or hydraulic leveling systems. The kind that level your whole rig automatically while you sit inside sipping your coffee. I get the appeal, I really do. But here's the mechanic's truth behind that convenience. Every motor, every hydraulic pump, every seal and every control module in one of those automatic systems is one more thing that can fail on you, usually at the worst possible time, usually in a spot with no cell signal and no service center anywhere close. A manual screw jack, on the other hand, is about as simple a machine as you're going to find on your whole rig. It's a threaded shaft, a hand crank, and a base plate. That's it. There's no motor to burn out, no hydraulic fluid to leak, no seal to dry out and fail, and no control board to short out from a little bit of moisture getting where it shouldn't. I had a client years back, fella named Roger, who bought a 5th wheel with one of those fancy hydraulic auto leveling systems. Real proud of it too. Showed it off to me the first week he had it. Walked me around the whole rig pointing out how the panel lit up green once everything was perfectly level. No guesswork involved. I told him it looked slick, and it genuinely did. 18 months later, one of those hydraulic rams started leaking fluid, and by the time he caught it, noticing a small puddle underneath the rig one morning that he almost mistook for condensation, he'd lost enough pressure that the whole system wouldn't level evenly anymore. One corner always sitting just slightly off, no matter how many times he ran the cycle. Cost him close to $1,000 to get that ram replaced, and the system bled and recalibrated. And he was without full use of his rig for almost 2 weeks, waiting on the part to arrive from out of state. Meanwhile, my own rig's been running the same manual screw jack since I bought it. No failures, no surprises. Just crank them down, crank them back up, and move on with my trip, season after season without a single hiccup. The stigma folks have around manual jacks is that they're slow, they're a hassle, and they make you get out in the rain to crank a handle when the automatic system would have done it from inside. I won't pretend there's no truth to that inconvenience. There is, but I want you to weigh that minor inconvenience against the alternative, which is a system that might leave you stuck on level, or worse, leave your rig sitting crooked on soft ground, because a hydraulic ram gave out on you in the middle of nowhere. 5 extra minutes of cranking a handle in the weather is a trade I'll make every single time over the risk of a $1,000 repair bill and 2 weeks without my rig. Here's your insider check for keeping these jacks running forever, because even the simplest machine still needs a little attention. Once or twice a season, pull each jack all the way down, wipe the threaded shaft clean of any dirt or grit that's built up, and apply a fresh coat of lithium grease along that thread. That grease keeps the mechanism turning smooth and keeps rust from ever getting a foothold on that exposed metal. While you're down there, take a look at the base plate and make sure it's not bent or cracked from setting down on an uneven rock or a sharp edge at some point. A bent base plate is about the only thing likely to cause you trouble with these, and it's an easy thing to catch early with just a quick look. Do that twice a year, and there is genuinely no reason one of these should ever let you down. Coming in at number 2 is your basic 12-volt electrical system. And I want to be real specific about what I mean here, because I'm not talking about the fancy lithium battery banks with smart monitoring apps that everybody's excited about these days. I'm talking about the plain, old-fashioned setup. A simple lead-acid or AGM battery bank, a basic converter charger, and a straightforward fuse panel distributing power to your lights, your water pump, your fans, and the rest of your basic systems. This is the electrical backbone that's been running RVs reliably since long before anybody thought to put a computer chip inside a battery. Now, I want to be fair to the lithium crowd, because lithium batteries genuinely do offer real advantages: lighter weight, deeper usable capacity, faster charging. I'm not telling you lithium's bad. What I am telling you is that every lithium battery bank relies on something called a battery management system. A little computer chip that watches every cell, balances the charge, and protects the battery from being damaged. When that chip works right, it's a wonderful piece of engineering. But when that chip glitches or fails outright, which does happen, sometimes from a power surge, sometimes from moisture finding its way in, sometimes just from a manufacturing defect, that entire expensive battery bank can lock up and refuse to charge or discharge at all. And you're looking at a repair or replacement that can run you well over $1,000. Sometimes a whole lot more depending on the size of your system. A basic lead-acid or AGM system doesn't have that single point of failure. There's no chip that can brick the whole bank. If one battery in the bank starts going bad, you can often identify it, isolate it, and replace just that one unit for a fraction of what a lithium system replacement costs you. I met a fella at a rally, goes by Walter, been running the exact same style of simple lead-acid setup in his travel trailer for going on 15 years now, replacing individual batteries here and there as they've worn out over that time. Maybe 5 or 6 batteries total across those 15 years. Total cost over all those years still coming in well under what one lithium bank replacement would run him today. Walter keeps a little notebook, believe it or not, tracking which battery he installed and when, just so he knows roughly when to expect the next one might need swapping. And he told me that habit alone has kept him from ever once being caught by surprise. Walter told me he's watched 3 different neighbors at his home RV storage lot deal with a bricked lithium system over the years, and every single time it happened at the worst possible moment, usually right before a big trip they'd been planning for months. One neighbor, according to Walter, had saved up for a whole summer to finally afford the lithium upgrade, only to have the management system fail on him less than a year later, right as he was loading up for a trip out west he'd been talking about for as long as Walter had known him. Walter said watching that unfold was part of what convinced him to stick with what he already had, running reliably. Rather than chasing the newer technology, everybody at the rally kept talking up. The stigma with a basic lead-acid system is that it's heavier, it doesn't hold as much usable charge, and it takes longer to recharge than lithium does. All true. If you're chasing maximum boondocking capability, and you've got the budget for it, lithium might make sense for your situation. and I'm not going to tell you otherwise. But if what you value most is knowing your electrical system is going to work the same reliable way every single time you flip a switch, without a chip somewhere deciding today's not the day, a simple lead-acid or AGM setup remains about as bulletproof as electrical power gets in an RV. Your insider check on this system is straightforward. Check your battery terminals every season for any sign of corrosion, that white or greenish crust that builds up over time, and clean it off with a mixture of baking soda and water if you find any, since corrosion at the terminal is one of the few things that actually does cause trouble with these simple setups. If you're running flooded lead-acid batteries rather than sealed AGM, check your water levels every couple months and top them off with distilled water as needed, because letting those plates run dry is the single fastest way to kill an otherwise perfectly good battery. Keep those terminals clean and those water levels topped off, and a basic lead-acid system will keep quietly doing its job trip after trip, year after year, without ever once needing a software update. And now we come to number 1, the very system I trust more than any other on my entire rig, and the one I'm going deepest on today, because I think it genuinely deserves it. Your standing pilot propane system, meaning your propane appliances, your stove, and if your rig's got one, an older style water heater or furnace, that use a simple standing pilot light and a mechanical safety valve, instead of an electronic ignition module. Let me explain what makes this system nearly indestructible, because once you understand the mechanism, you'll never look at that little pilot flame the same way again. A standing pilot appliance works off a small flame that stays lit continuously, and a little device called a thermocouple, which is nothing more than a simple heat sensor made of 2 different metals joined together. When that pilot flame is burning, the thermocouple generates a tiny electrical signal that holds a safety valve open, allowing gas to flow to the main burner whenever you call for heat or flame. If that pilot flame ever goes out, the thermocouple stops generating that signal within seconds, and the safety valve snaps shut, cutting off gas flow completely. There's no circuit board here, there's no sensor package, there's no software making decisions. It's pure mechanical cause and effect. The same basic principle that's been keeping gas appliances safe for the better part of a century, and it works exactly the same way whether your battery's dead, whether you're parked with no electrical hookup at all, or whether you're 20 years into owning this rig with no updates or replacement parts ever needed beyond the occasional cheap thermocouple. Compare that to a modern direct spark ignition system, the kind you'll find standard on most newer RV appliances these days. The kind most dealers will show you first because it feels more modern and more convenient on a walkthrough. Those rely on a circuit board to sense when you want heat, trigger an electronic igniter, confirm a flame's actually present using a sensor, and manage the whole process electronically. When that board works right, it's convenient. No pilot light burning constantly, no manual lighting required. But when that board fails, and RV circuit boards absolutely do fail, especially from moisture, from vibration on rough roads, or just from age, you're looking at a part that's sometimes hard to source, sometimes has to be special ordered, and sometimes costs more than the appliance itself was worth to replace. And here's the part that really gets me. When a modern ignition board fails, that appliance is completely useless until it's fixed. No workaround, no backup. It just doesn't work. A standing pilot system, if something ever did go wrong with it beyond a simple thermocouple, which is a $5 to $10 part, you can often replace yourself with a wrench. And about 15 minutes can literally be lit with a match in a pinch. I've done it myself more than once, out at a remote site where I wanted heat before I'd even gotten around to checking the pilot. That kind of dead simple fallback simply doesn't exist with an electronic system. There's no matchstick workaround for a fried circuit board. I want to tell you about a fella named Dennis, who I met years back stuck at a campground with a brand new rig that had every modern convenience you could ask for, including full electronic ignition on every single appliance. He'd been proud to show it off too, told me the whole rig had cost him a small fortune, and every system in it was the latest and greatest the manufacturer had to offer. Middle of a cold snap, temperatures dropping well below freezing overnight. His furnace board failed, dead as a doornail. No warning, no error code he could make sense of. Just a furnace that wouldn't fire no matter what he tried. He called the manufacturer's support line, sat on hold a good while, and eventually got told the part wasn't something the campground store or the nearest hardware store had any way of helping him with. It would need to be special ordered and shipped, and that could take anywhere from several days to over a week depending on availability. He spent 3 miserable nights running a space heater off his generator just to keep from freezing, waking up every couple hours to check the generator hadn't run dry, burning through fuel and patience in equal measure. Worried the whole time about carbon monoxide since he wasn't used to running things that way and kept second-guessing whether he had enough ventilation. Meanwhile, I was parked 2 sites down running my old standing pilot furnace, same one that's been in that rig since I bought it used almost 20 years ago. Warm as could be the whole time, without a single worry crossing my mind about parts, shipping times, or generator fuel. Dennis wandered over on that second night, half out of curiosity and half just needing to talk to somebody, and asked me point blank if I'd trade him straight across for my setup, older cosmetics and all, dents and faded upholstery included. I told him I wouldn't take that trade even if he threw in cash on top, and I meant it. He laughed, but I could tell it wasn't really a joke to him at that point. 3 nights deep into a cold snap with a 5-figure rig that couldn't keep him warm. The stigma against standing pilot systems is real, and I understand where it comes from. Folks don't love the idea of a flame burning continuously, even though it's a tiny, controlled, and genuinely safe flame that's been proven reliable for generations. Some worry about the extra propane it uses keeping that pilot lit, though in practice that amount is small enough that it barely registers against your overall propane usage across a season. And plenty of newer RVRs have simply never been exposed to anything but electronic ignition, so a standing pilot feels old-fashioned or inconvenient by comparison, something from their grandparents' era instead of something worth seeking out today. I understand the instinct, but I'd ask you to weigh a little bit of old-fashioned inconvenience against never once being stranded by a failed circuit board in the middle of a cold night with nowhere to turn. Your insider check here is simple and doesn't take much time at all. Once a season, take a look at your pilot flame itself. It should burn a steady, mostly blue color with maybe a small touch of yellow at the tip. If that flame's looking weak, flickering excessively, or burning more yellow than blue, that usually means the pilot orifice has gotten a little dirty and needs a gentle cleaning. Something you can handle yourself with a soft brush or even just a can of compressed air. No need to call anybody out for that. Test your thermocouple's response time too, while you're at it. Light the pilot, hold the gas control knob in as directed for about 30 seconds, then release it. The pilot should stay lit on its own. If it goes out the moment you release that knob, your thermocouple's likely worn out and due for replacement, which again is a cheap part and a simple job, not a reason to call a repair shop. So there you have it. 3 systems, no computer chips, no software, no fragile electronics standing between you and a working rig. Manual stabilizer jacks that outlast any hydraulic system. A basic lead-acid electrical setup that never leaves you locked out by a failed battery. Management chip. And a standing pilot propane system that'll still light with nothing but a match if everything else in this world goes sideways on you. None of these 3 are ever the flashiest option on a dealer's showroom floor. And I'll be honest with you, they're not always what a salesman's going to steer you toward. Because there's not a whole lot of profit margin in something that never breaks and never needs replacing. A salesman makes his commission on the upgrade, not on talking you into keeping things simple. And that's exactly why you rarely hear this side of the story unless you go looking for it, or unless somebody like me is willing to say it plain. But if what you actually want out of your rig is dependability, year after year, trip after trip, without worrying about a chip or a circuit board deciding today's the day it quits on you, these 3 systems are exactly where I'd point you. I'm not telling you to rip out perfectly good modern equipment if that's what your rig already came with and it's working fine for you. What I am telling you is that if you're ever faced with a choice between the simple version and the fancy version, whether you're buying a new rig, replacing a worn-out component, or deciding what to prioritize on a build, don't assume newer automatically means better, just because it looks more impressive on the showroom floor. I want to hear directly from you on this one. Drop a comment down below and tell me which of these three systems you're already running, or if you've had your own experience with a modern electronic system letting you down at the worst possible time, the way Dennis's furnace did. I know I'm far from the only one who's watched a fancy system fail at exactly the wrong moment, and hearing your stories helps the next person watching make a more informed choice before they're standing in Dennis's shoes at 2 in the morning, wondering why they ever upgraded in the first place. And if you've got another old-school, low-tech system you trust just as much as these three, one that's earned its keep on your rig over the years without ever once letting you down, I'd love to hear about that too. Because I know there's more good old reliable engineering out there than what I managed to fit into just 3 picks today. Before I let you go, if you're in the market for a new rig, or you're thinking about upgrading a system on the one you've already got, don't automatically assume newer and more electronic means better. Take a hard look at what you're actually gaining against what you might be risking, and ask yourself honestly whether that convenience is worth the trade-off if it fails on you 3 states from home with nobody around to help. Sometimes the old way really is the better way, and these 3 systems are proof that simple, mechanical, and dependable never really goes out of style, no matter what the showroom floor is trying to sell you this year. I'm Hank Dawson. Thank you kindly for listening to Roadside Wisdom, and I'll see you in the next one.